So welcome back, everybody. And today we're gonna discuss editing. I think this is something today that we all sort of just assume that we do, right? I mean, if you see an image online on social media platforms, you're gonna assume there's been some type of editing done to it, because most of us don't walk out of the house every day, especially if it's us, like if it's a photo of a subject, if it's people. Most of us don't walk out of the house every day. Looking completely 100% put together, right? I mean, we can all be, improved a little bit with editing and softening of ourselves, especially when we're walking around in light that isn't great, on our skin or our texture of our skin. Yeah, so I mean, dude, everybody edits these days. And so, I mean, why do we edit? Like, why not just push stuff out there that is authentic and realistic and looks like us, how we look every day? Like, I mean, I've often wondered about this, right? But even in like in the film times of my career, people wanted editing. They wanted it to look different than they looked. The photo captured truth. It was very, very, photos, you guys were truthful, right? I mean, and people don't want the truth. And I think that's like sort of what editing sort of boils down to a little bit also, is that, we don't really want the truth out there. I mean, we want a polished version of ourselves that's not completely authentic. It's not completely accurate. Even this guy right here that you're looking at, who's 100 years old, I went to his birthday party. They hired me to go down and shoot it because, he was an older guy and it was a big celebration. Everybody was super happy about it. And they asked me to take a photo of him that sort of resembled who he was and, was sort of a characteristic sort of portrait of the man. And I brought a big piece of black foam core down and put him in front of a window at the casino where they had their event. And I photographed this guy. And on the left-hand side is how he came out of the camera, like, what do you call it? Like authentic, right? There's no editing done there. It's just straight out of camera. OOC, it's called when we talk about that in the profession, right? So he's OOC, out of camera. It looks like this. And to the right is an edited version of him. Honestly, I don't tend to, as a working professional, I don't tend to edit people like crazy. Simply because I did that once and got really, really, I got rung up for it, man. Like, I had this woman come in and I photographed her and she had a scar on her neck somewhere. And then I think she had a mole too, that I mistook for something that I would remove. So I removed the scar and I removed the mole. And she came back in and wanted to talk to me about her photos. And so she came into the room, right, the viewing room, and she looked at her photos and we went over them and she said, "Where's my beauty mark and why don't I have a scar?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry I took those off. I just thought those were like something that I should probably remove." And she goes, "No, I like my beauty mark and I'm proud of my scar. It is a big deal to me. It has a lot of meaning." And she went into it, and I felt like an idiot for assuming that she would want me to remove things that I thought were ugly or weren't very aesthetically pleasing. I thought she'd want them removed, and she didn't. So I don't do that anymore. Like, I literally err on the side of caution. What my professional editing encompasses for portraits is basically color correction. I take out acne, I take out wispy hairs, I whiten teeth a little bit, and that's about it. And the reason that is because my philosophy is that if you would look like this normally in real life on a good day, then I don't mind editing that out. Like, for instance, this guy here, he's got some little marks on his cheeks from blood and bruises and stuff. I mean, he's got a little bit of, skin color discolorations and things like that. And he's got some little looks like little bits of skin on his chin or around his nose, just little dry skin and stuff. And these things right here, if he were on a good day, right, and just woke up one day and his bruise went away and these weren't there, he'd still look like that, right? So in addition to cleaning up some of the blood, little marks and skin on his face, I color graded a little bit and then increased the texture and then just changed the tone of it a little bit, right? Because he looked a little bit washed out at the window that we were at, and I felt like it didn't look nearly as, let's say healthy, like a healthy skin tone. I thought he looked a little bit pale, right? And I wanted him to look like the grandpa that everybody sort of knew. And so I tried to put him back a little bit to sort of a healthy look, right? But this is basically, you guys, professional like editing that I do for people. Here's another example of Claire. I was working with Claire as a aspiring model, and she wanted to get into modeling and stuff. And I asked her if she minded after the shoot if I could go in and like edit her how I would edit her, just sort of just for fun. And she gave me full reign to edit her, right? So what I did was this, and if you'll notice, this right here, this edit is a manual edit. I didn't push a button or use a filter or anything. I changed everything in Photoshop, from her eye size, her eye tilt, her head tilt. Like I changed all this stuff, and then I added a little bit of color grade warmth to it right at the end. But you'll see that from here to here, I didn't just go about and take acne out or skin discolorations or a little bit of redness in the eye. Like I went and removed everything, and I also shaped her nose and changed it. I improved. Well, I'm not going to say improved. I like full lips on myself, so I would say improved. But I mean, some people don't like full lips. But yeah, I increased the fullness of her lips. I pulled her eyes open a little bit to get to see into more of her eye. I did a lot of work here on this image, and she doesn't look anything like this, right? So it's sort of a bummer. Like, I mean, if she were to use this as her profile image, which she wouldn't, because she knew I was just sort of playing around and using this as a demo. This doesn't look anything like her, right? I mean, not a thing. So this is Claire again, and this looks a little more like her, right? But you'll see again, I took acne off her forehead. I warmed it up because she looked a little bit cool in terms of like color temperature, right? And we'll discuss that in the editing section this week. I took acne off her lip. I took acne off her face. I brought her freckles out just a hair, a little bit, and I tried to take the dark circles down underneath her eyes just a touch, right? And then her brows were killing me, so I adjusted brows also. These were what I was going for, right? So then it looks like I took a piece of, if you look down at the bottom of her eye that's next to the grass and stuff, it looks like I took a stick off that was sticking into her face, and I took that off too, just to clear up her eye. But I mean, editing, you guys, so back, I sort of went into this a little bit in the beginning. Film photography sort of represented truth. Back before digital, and I grew up with film, when I saw a photo in the newspaper, we immediately believed it was true. Like there was no, this could be faked. We thought that what we saw in magazines like Nat Geo and other publications and stuff, we didn't think they'd be edited at all. Like that would never have occurred to me. Even as an aspiring photographer at the time with film, I never ever in a million years thought that the photos I saw in publications would be faked or edited. As soon as Photoshop came around, there began to be a shift away from photo as truth to sort of the idea that every photo had the potential to be edited, and therefore it wasn't an accurate depiction of reality. And I think we've come a long way from even that today, where now I think most photos are edited and almost nothing is completely reality. I mean, I've become a huge skeptic. If I see any photo at all, my first thought is what part of this has been edited and what part is real, right? I can't honestly even bank on landscape photos I see, because there's so many landscape photographers out there now that are digitally editing and compositing and using other landscapes to drop in to the landscape they shot to make it more interesting. And therefore the landscapes aren't even like realistic. Like you could see a landscape online somewhere or on social media and then go there and it looks nothing like that. Like it looks absolutely nothing like it, right? So the important takeaway from this is, you guys, at one point in our history in this country, film was sort of considered a very truthful medium, right? You could even use it in court for legal stuff as sort of the evidence, right? Because there are photographers that fooled around with it in their darkrooms and stuff, but that wasn't the norm. And those were sort of artistic and very clumsy in terms of their execution. Oftentimes they weren't meant to look real and realistic. they were meant to look sort of weird and abstract and interesting, right? So we as a nation, right, when these images came out, I mean, during the O.J. Simpson trial, and if you don't know who O.J. Simpson is, he was a famous football player. Pretty sure he's a running back. He was accused of murdering his, I think it was his wife and her boyfriend or her lover or something. He was accused of murdering them. And this trial was huge, right? This is a huge, big trial. And it made headlines everywhere. It was highly glamorized and highly broadcast, like everywhere. I think we all watched it as he was in the courtroom. It was sort of like the whole nation turned in to watch to see if he would be convicted and found guilty, right? So the Newsweek image on the left side is O.J. Simpson's like photo as it was taken, like for the mugshot, right? That was released. The right one, Time magazine, decided to make him look darker black and more shadowed. And right? I felt the exact same way. These two magazines, I mean, had a reputation for like telling the truth. So you'd sort of expect, and a lot of us would expect of certain generations, that these were accurate in the truth, right? So people that don't know about photo editing, which is a lot of people in the United States, unfortunately, looked at the one on the right and thought, wow, he looks super dark and super demonic. Look at the flippin', they put a dark vignette on him. They darkened the whole thing. I don't know why I mean, they had an editorial purpose, I'm pretty sure, behind doing that. They wanted to make him look more mean and more aggressive and more guilty was the thing. And they took a lot of flack for that. And Time issued a response, an apology, and they weren't seen nearly as, I don't know, they didn't seem nearly as reputable after this stunt that they pulled. So here's another example, you guys. I think this guy was out of Portland, if I remember correctly. He was a guy that went in and said a witness saw him and saw him rob a bank, right? Apparently, and she described the witness, and she described him as having no tattoos. She didn't mention a single tattoo that the guy had, which you think would have been something she would have said if she was describing this dude, because he has tattoos on his face, right? You think that would be like a telling piece of evidence or observation that would, make this guy more resemble the bank robber, right? So, but she said she saw this dude. She described him. She didn't describe any single photos. So what they did was police officers went in and they photoshopped all of his tattoos out and then darkened him up also, right? So then they showed her this lineup photo, and this was like fraud, dude. I mean, this was like a complete breach of trust of the police department, and illegal, like to probably show somebody a photo that's been doctored and altered and changed so that she would be more apt to pick him out of the lineup, right? Because she didn't notice that he had tattoos. She described him as having no tattoos. So these kinds of things, you guys, when it comes to editing, like the O.J. Simpson cover and removing tattoos in Photoshop to make people look more like a witness's statement to try to find a criminal. These kinds of things are highly unethical and oftentimes illegal, right? I mean, honestly, if I were to have been OJ, I would have sued Time for this manipulation. I would have sued the crap out of him for making me look bad, for like defamation, libel, slander. I mean, I'd have picked and ran with a character assassination type thing in the press, and I'd have I would not have been happy, right? And this guy, same. So this is when stuff really started to get bad, and there was as soon as Photoshop started coming around, right, and developing a better and better tools, right, for things, and it became more and more sophisticated. Things we started, again, news and stuff that we started thinking that we used to think was truth, we started to doubt because of scandals like this. So this caption for the original Reuters photo was an Israeli F-16 warplane fires missiles during an airstrike on Nabatea in South Lebanon. So those aren't missiles in the photo. They're defensive flares, right? And more importantly, the photo had been doctored to show 3 flares when in fact there had only been 1. So somebody cut and paste freaking things in here, described them as missiles, and instead of 1 added several. Now, why is this bad? Well, I mean, if you're talking about like conflict in the Middle East, and you're saying that Israel is launching missiles at stuff, and you're posting photos of it, that is, I mean, gosh, I mean, there's already enough conflict there already. Why not just like post antagonistic stuff that's not true, and make everybody go nuts and think that Israel's attacking, you know, and firing missiles on southern Lebanon? I mean, do you want to start a war? This is the kind of photo that would start a war if people saw this and didn't know that editing was this good, right? And they couldn't discern that this was editing. Same thing here. If you'll notice to the very left of the photo, you'll see these little circles in the tops of the clouds. They look like the exact same thing has been punched out over and over and over. That's the clone stamp used very badly in Photoshop. Okay, that's a complete Photoshop job. They darkened the smoke. It looks like they tried to clone it in and add more smoke to make it look worse than it was. So this guy, again, for Reuters, he used Photoshop to clone and darken the smoke to examine bombing damage by Israeli warplanes. So during this conflict, I mean, they were using Photoshop to increase tensions and garner sympathy and show the images in a worse light than they had originally been shot. Okay, they're going for that effect. They do stuff like this all the time. They started like removing, like, oops, I left my my video camera in the shot. Let's just remove that and clone that out. There's a better image. That guy was fired, that journalist. And then we've got here some images from Reuters where it looks like this guy was moved, right? So there's the grandpa dude in the back by the pole that was way back there for context on that curb in the corner. So it looks like she was there with the guy and then they moved him up here away from that corner. I'm not sure why. And then are staging and standing here. And then there's this one where the doctor, it looks like he's got his shirt off in one photo. In the very next photo, the dude is on the ground and, I mean, so he put scrubs on and then held the guy up and then took his shirt off in the back. And see, I mean, there's all kinds of like clues here, you guys, to let you see that these two dudes in the front, the first and second frame were the same and they're cheating. So Steve McCurry, there's a photographer that I loved. And for a long time, I obsessed over this guy. I thought his travel stuff was amazing. I took a conference from him once. And for most of his professionals that were a little bit younger, he was a dude that was like, not only, I mean, was he a working photographer, right? That made money as a skilled photographer, but he also traveled a lot, did lots of workshops and had lots and lots of like, what are they called? Like award-winning photos. This dude had award-winning photos everywhere, had books out. I mean, still, you can find loads of books out by this guy and all kinds of stuff, right? So one of the first things I saw was, if you've ever seen this woman, this Afghan girl on the cover of National Geographic, it was one of the most popular National Geographic covers of all time, like ever. He got really, really famous based off this. And on the right-hand side, you'll see that's the woman. I think that was like 5 or 6 years ago. That's her now. But it turned out that Steve McCurry acted like he was a photojournalism guy, right? A photojournalist, which again, photojournalists, we believe, tell the truth. They go by a strict code. They aren't allowed to do any Photoshop manipulation. They are the news tellers, the news people, right? That go out and take these photos and stuff, and they're supposed to tell the truth, and they don't have any editing, right? And they also have a sort of a credo or a ethics on how to approach a scene and what to get involved or not get involved with, right? Or to stage a scene, which is why the images we just saw, where we saw those people crying over dead bodies and stuff in war, it's why that's so like alarming and awful, is because they're staging scenes and acting like they're real. And photojournalists, we rely on them to tell us the truth again, and they aren't allowed to do that. So what with this photo right here, they said it came out later that Steve McCurry, this woman did not want to have her photo taken and did not want to have her portrait taken because she was afraid to have her face seen. She wanted to be covered, and he asked her to take her bob off of her face so she could be seen. And yeah, it was he manipulated her into taking this photo when she didn't really want to. And that's not part of what photojournalists are supposed to do. That's more of a portrait photographer, and that would be fine if you're a commercial portrait photographer. But if you're a photojournalist, you don't really do those things and manipulate the scene or people. These are some of his photos, and you can see a little bit why he was such a great photographer, and loads of people liked him. I mean, he tells an amazing story, right? And his images have this beautiful sense of light. He has a beautiful connection with his subjects. He just seems to be in the right place at the right time. And there's a little bit of an intimacy involved. He's really, really close to all of his subjects and all of his subject material. And he uses color in a fantastic way, right? I mean, a lot of these shots have this really beautiful sense of color. They're not only storytelling, and we see a little bit about people, right? But there's this sense of like story and mystery and fun and color and a little bit that the people are never really aware that he's there, which is weird because the dude's standing probably 10 feet away from them with a wide angle lens or a 50, right? Very few of these are shot with a real long lens. He usually gets right up in your face and is in the area where he's shooting. So some of these images, right, I look at them and go, man, dude, if I ever shot this, I would be, I don't know, I would quit. Like, I'd retire because this is so good. The color scheme in this is so freaking beautiful that all this just happened to be like this, where they happen to have like cool light blue colored clothes on, and then this red with the red vegetables they're picking also. It's like, what? Like, what is, I mean, how is that possible? So unfortunately, he published some stuff in National Geographic that people caught, and what happened is he's doing an exhibition, and people caught stuff online, and they caught stuff in the exhibition that he'd screwed up. Like, if you look real close, it looks like he went to clone out this guy's foot or clone out part of the foot or whatever, and he grabbed the part of the pole too, and it just shows that the image is sort of fake, right? You can see here that he sort of messed this up. He tried to clone the part of the pole out, and you can tell he's been using the clone stamp. So because of that, people started going in and looking at all of his other stuff and his other work and seeing if they could find out places where he cheated and cut people out or remove people to make an image better. And you can see in this one, the little boy, there's a little boy that's reaching down over the water thing, whatever that is, right above his head. Coming out of his head is a little dude, a little guy in the background. He removed him. And the reason he removed him is he's known as what's called a visual tangent. And a tangent is something that's cropping out or coming out of somebody's body. And that type of tangent is called an antler or a growth. Like an antler, like out of an elk or a deer, or growth, like, I don't even know. I mean, you get the idea, right? So he took that out. He also took, it looks like, the little hand out in the very top right of the image in the top. He took that hand out also and then sort of warmed it up and brightened it up. In this one here, he removed stuff too. He removed the creepy weird guy that's looking at between the two on the actual rickshaw, right? There's 4 dudes in that thing, and he left 2. He took out one, the face that's between the two at the very top, and there's another one that looks like it's sort of leaning around the guy in the very front. He removed both of those with the clone stamp, right? Now, he's not supposed to remove this stuff. He also removed, it looks like, the apple bin or apple table. He changed the color of the people. He removed the dude that was standing with the red with the feet. He took his legs off. And on the very left, he also removed, it looks like, another rickshaw behind the people. Like, he removed all kinds of stuff and darkened stuff down to make this look better. You can't do that, right? So McCurry was an established National Geographic photojournalist, right? Now, there was all kinds of like, like backlash online and people saying he's not great and he lied to us and his award should be revoked. And he responded to the controversy in an interview with Time. The piece is titled, "I'm a visual storyteller, not a photojournalist." And he says that he'll rein in his use of Photoshop going forward. You know what? The thing is, you guys, nobody cared if he used Photoshop. They cared that he lied and acted like he didn't, right? Because there is some like mystique still in awe if you're able to capture a photo exactly as you see it and not have to edit at all, because that exact moment in time was just like bang, you like nailed it. Your timing was on, everything worked, and you delivered this delicious snack of an image. And then all of a sudden, people find out you just created it in Photoshop sitting at your desk. I mean, there's a little bit of a letdown with that, right? We just want to know what's real and what's not. He said, going forward, I'm committed to only using the program, Photoshop, in a minimal way, even for my own work taken on personal trips. Reflecting on the situation, even though I felt that I could do what I wanted to my own pictures, again, does he feel sorry for lying to everybody? Even though I felt that I could do what I wanted to my own pictures in an aesthetic and compositional sense, no, dude, you frickin' lied. I now understand how confusing it must be for people who think I'm still a photojournalist. Well, maybe, dude, if your entire career you didn't represent yourself as a photojournalist, no one would have flippin' thought you were still a photojournalist. Not to mention you never announced it, fool, until you were caught. So, I mean, give me a break, man. I mean, just be real and like authentic and legit, and don't act like you shot stuff in camera that you didn't. I mean, dude, just embrace and own that the fact that you like faked that stuff and you just photoshopped it, right? I mean, who cares if you did? Just tell the truth. Anyway, yeah. So he actually was responsible for a huge contingent of photographers now looking at like National Geographic photos and stuff and things like that, and just we don't really see them the same. You know, now we're worried that somebody got through and like faked something, and we don't even think that it was shot in camera and it was just this authentic moment that happened, right? So here's the photojournalism code for any that you want to know. This is what this used to be, you guys, what everybody adhered to let us know that everything was like truthful and stuff. And this came out with AP and Reuters, the Associated Press and Reuters. They came out with these guidelines because they wanted to avoid anybody else ripping off images off the net, modifying them, adding to images, or heavy photo manipulation, so that we could still sort of have a little bit of faith and trust in what they produce. But the first one is resist being manipulated by staged photo opportunities, like the ones of the war we first saw in the beginning of the lecture. Those were totally staged, while photographing subjects do not intentionally contribute to, alter, or seek to alter or influence events. This really bugs me because I feel like photojournalists should jump in and save people if they're, in war-torn countries and they're on the verge of getting killed or something. And if they can save them, they should. But I get that you probably shouldn't, intervene a whole lot maybe and try to stay objective and just record what you've got. I don't know. That'd be a hard one for me. Don't intrude on private moments of grief only when the public has an overriding and justifiable need to see. So don't exploit human suffering, pretty much. And then do not intentionally sabotage the efforts of other journalists, right? I could see, somebody jump in front of somebody else, or, stealing their SD card. I don't know. I don't know what kind of like antics photojournalists have when they're covering war with each other. I assume they wouldn't probably do stuff like that. That would be awful. But that was just sort of the ethical code of what they can do. This is what they can do with editing. They can remove dust. So if there's dust spots on the image, they can remove those, because that's what we could do in film. And honestly, that doesn't alter the content of or vibe of the photo or the truthfulness of the photo. You can crop the photo. You can dodge and burn. And dodging and burning is literally, dodging is lightening the photo in a little bit of areas, and burning is darkening the photo in a little bit of areas. And there's conversion to grayscale, which is just making it black and white. They can't even do red eye removal. And you can't change in the density, contrast, color, or saturation. So a lot of those color choices and stuff you can't do either. You're supposed to have as accurate of color as you possibly can, right? But just because we can edit, right? I mean, all this editing and all this power that comes from editing apps now. I mean, whether it be Photoshop, Affinity, whether it be tools you guys have that we have in social media platforms that we can edit with. I mean, just because we can, does that actually mean we should all the time? What happens when editing goes too far? And like, who's Who's responsible for having sort of like a code of when to edit and when not to? If you look at this photo, this Victoria's Secret photo that was published online for their catalog, you'll see that there's an elbow sticking on the right side of this girl, the front girl's body. There's a flippin' elbow, and there's no way that the back gal has an elbow that long. It's absolutely anatomically impossible, right? Here's another one. Look down at her legs. They do not attach to her pelvis. So whatever they did here, in terms of editing, this got through, and Photoshop editors thought that this would be a good idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like a lot of them have studied anatomy. So I feel like they should probably go study anatomy first and then come back and go, oh, dude, yeah, this leg here, this wouldn't work because she wouldn't be able to walk with her legs on the outside of her hips. Probably not a thing. Same thing here, right? If you look back on her back arm, they removed her back arm entirely and then forgot or whatever. Here, well, it's very noticeable what happened here. They augmented something and they didn't augment the other one, right? Not very great. I mean, if you're gonna fool around, you might want to be, make sure everything's even. Same thing here with the hip thing and the leg thing. Literally, this is from Victoria's Secret site, right? Off their catalog, where this got on their site somehow and made it through, and the leg looks like it goes to somewhere else. If you drew a line down her hip, that leg wouldn't be part of her body. Okay, it's like a magic trick. Here, they, in an effort to be more inclusive, instead of hiring models that represented different ethnicities and cultures and backgrounds, they figured it would be the easiest to just swap a little boy's head from another photo that didn't match light. The guy in the back has been swapped and the little kid in the front's been swapped. So I don't know why they thought that looked good or looked the same, but I mean, it's not close. This, I think this is Twilight. Look at Bella's neck. What? Like, that's impossible. No one's neck's that long, dude. Right? So again, maybe they should study anatomy, because then they would know that I don't even know, right? How did the woman in the green get her arm around that woman's waist? But oh wait, it's her own arm around her own waist? I don't even see. Tragic. Left arm disappears. It goes somewhere else. Edit it out. Here, Demi Moore. Look right down at her leg down there where the arrow is. This is the cover of W Magazine. I have this issue because I used to subscribe to W Magazine. You'll see that her hip has been pushed in and her quad muscle is, farther out than her hip. So they pushed her whole body in and left her legs out. It's just ridiculous. Here, Adam Levine, he's had apparently all of his ribs removed and half of his organs, and his pelvic bone. So he can fit into 15-inch waist pants. Totally don't get that. This here, clearly her hands were going behind her and they thought that her hands would go in front of her better. I don't even know, guys. I own this book. Okay. It was a book Vogue put out. This is part of, who's that? Kate Moss. This is part of Kate Moss, an update with Kate Moss and her daughter and stuff. And they photoshopped her fingers out, the daughter's fingers out of the shot. Like, it's just unreal what they miss. This is something, you guys, I saw. It's sort of cool. It showed a before and after of this actor, and she came out against a lot of Photoshop editing, and a lot of people actually these days. It's actually sort of refreshing. A lot of women these days are saying, "Hey, dude, don't edit me like that." Keira Knightley is famous for it. They're constantly trying to make her look bustier and having a larger chest, and she's constantly pushed back on that and said, "Dude, that's not my body. I don't want to look like that." So it's great that some of these people are standing up to photo editors and telling them that, like, dude, get off my body, right? I mean, in Men's Health here we have Zac Efron, right? And if you see, I don't even know what muscle that is, a tornado, the tornado muscle on his left shoulder right there, that looks like a whirling little tornado, is absent on the one on the left or the other side, right? And I think these were shot very close in terms of time. They were shot close to each other, right? So the dude doesn't look that ripped. I'm sorry. They airbrushed that and they went in and built that up. And Tim Tebow, despite what people say, I don't know. I never thought he had hands this small, right? So yeah, I mean, maybe that's why he had difficulty in the NFL, but I don't think this is realistic. Here we have, again, problems, right, in the anatomy area, where if you have a cheek on your butt on the right side, chances are you have one on your left. So, people just forget stuff. I mean, they're human, and they forget like what they should be editing, and they forget like what, I guess, I don't know, you guys. Honestly, I've never made those errors. I've never like had a mistake with what the human body was supposed to look like. So I'm not even sure. I mean, to me, it feels like they just pushed that out there and did that. And maybe it was a joke. I don't know. But there's lots of jokes, and there's lots of people that were fired. So maybe I'm pretty sure it wasn't a joke. Is there a standard, right? I mean, so beauty has long been associated. I mean, like, right? Because all these photo editors are making the same mistakes. They're making people skinnier. They're making men more muscular. They're taking women's legs and shrinking them down to nothing. And they're taking their hips away and doing all this stuff, right? I mean, so if they're all doing very similar things, you'd think there'd be like an industry standard for like beauty or editing, right? I mean, so what is the industry standard for that? And how has that influenced us? It used to be associated with symmetry and balance. What they used to say, going back years, was that people who had very symmetrical faces, meaning your eyebrows were the same shape and size, and they were the exact same distance above your eyes were the same shape and tilt and size, your nose was dead center between both eyes, your mouth was very dead center under your nose, and everything sort of lined up in a very mathematical, symmetrical way, right? So this guy named Alex John Beck decided to cut people's faces in half and give them two of their left sides and two of their right sides to see which one was more symmetrical, in sort of just an experiment, a photo exhibition, right? So both of these images here are the same guy, but on the left side, it contains both of his left sides, and on the right side, it contains both of his right sides. Wait, let me check. Yeah. So you'll see these people are probably not symmetrical, because if you were to take both halves of their face and put them together, if you took two left sides, they should be exactly the same as two right sides, right? Because they're even. So these images should look close. Now this woman right here looks pretty symmetrical, honestly. Yeah, she's close, except for maybe, I think the right side over there, her eyes are a little bit wider apart than the left. But man, this woman, I think, is pretty symmetrical to begin with, right? This guy looks sort of symmetrical too, I think. But I mean, photographers started, you guys, doing studies on like symmetry and balance and what people look like, to see what we consider to be beauty standards, right? Because how do you know what beauty standards are? Are they implied? I mean, are they something that we just see over time and they just sort of sink into us? They also did this. This photographer, Tiago Chedic, he created all these photos of people, right? And again, he did a very similar thing where he flipped right sides and flipped left sides to see if they were close to the original, and if they were, it showed that they were symmetrical. Like Giselle Bundchen, she looks, well, the far right one, her left sides look closer to her original, I think. But you can see, like, a lot of these women, like Hailey Baldwin, she looks very close, her right one looks very close to her original, which meaning I think the right side of her face is just a little bit different. So they're looking to see if you're symmetrical. This is Twiggy, right? She looks really symmetrical. She was an old like, I think she's an actor, the model in the 50s, right? Here's Tyra Banks. She's a model in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. She looks pretty symmetrical. Freaking Gigi looks pretty symmetrical too. Jeez. Yeah, she looks pretty symmetrical too. So does Alexandra Ambrosio. She was a high fashion model, I think a Sports Illustrated model also for a long time. Same with Jones. Ooh, Jones not very symmetrical. Cindy Crawford's not very symmetrical either. Maybe her right side, right? But you can sort of see, I don't know, I'm thinking Gigi's probably more symmetrical than her sister Bella. Because the right and left don't exactly look very close to the original. I think Gigi Hadid's did. Carly Kloss, her right sides look pretty symmetrical if they just use rights. Her left looks a little bit different. but she's a pretty symmetrical face. So is there so those are faces, right, you guys, and like how we like looked at symmetry of faces. But there's also our bodies. Like when we shoot full lengths and stuff and put it online and we photograph full lengths of people, is there a universal body standard there for beauty for our body? Well, they did an experiment and they sent out these instructions, or I can't remember who did it, but a photographer group or a media group did an experiment, and they sent these instructions out to Photoshop and editors all over the world. And their instructions were Photoshop her form. The idea is to Photoshop and retouch this woman to make her more attractive to the citizens of your country. We're looking to explore how perceptions of beauty change across the world. Multiple designers are involved. You can modify clothing, but her form must be visible. No nudity. All other changes, including those to her shape and form, are up to you. So basically, they gave all these designers and all these editors and Photoshop people and fashion editors in different countries, they gave them an original image and they said, modify this image to sort of show what would be most attractive to the citizens of your country, right? The standard beauty shape or body shape for your country. And here they are. Here's the original. This is what they sent out to everybody, is the gal on the left. And then this is what Argentina came back with. The designers in Argentina, they felt like this was sort of the what citizens in their country would find aesthetic or beautiful in terms of body shape. Here we have China. This is how the designers in China went about it, right? There's some changes there. We have Colombia. We have Egypt, right? Egypt with dark, beautiful. Look at that dark, gorgeous hair. Awesome. We have Italy. In Italy, they were, we'll get to Italy. They were one of the countries that really went heavy on some stuff. Mexico, Netherlands. I like how I see Italians. They changed their shoe. Italians like, no, we can't have this shoe like that. We're going to change the shoe up. Same thing with Netherlands. They're like, give her those boots. Those are cute. I like how they change their hair too, that the hair color is something that would be attractive to citizens in their country. I think that's interesting. Here's Peru. And if you look at the eyes from Netherlands to Peru, like Peru, they even changed their eyes. Philippines. We have Romania. Romania looks oddly close to the original, huh? I think they took her head down a little bit, though, it looks like. And they had no problem with her shoes. So that's good, right? Here's Serbia. And Serbia thinned her face out. Oh, wow. Serbia not only thinned her face out, but they pulled her shoulders down, too. Look. Jeez. South Africa. Spain. Not seeing a whole lot of change in Spain either. Syria, I see immediate changes to the face and shoulders and neck, right? UK. The UK made her a lot straighter, it looks like, in terms of the figure. Then we have Ukraine. They changed the red shoots to match the her fit, which I think is great. USA, there's us. This is the average body type that we would find most pleasing and pleasing to the citizens of the US. There's Venezuela. Interesting, right? So I don't condone or think that represents everybody. I think it was just an interesting experiment, right? An exercise to see what some of the returns were like. I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule and there are outliers, and I would be the last person to think that there is a universal beauty standard in the United States where if we got an image, I think it'd be edited differently per person. I'm not even sure there'd be a standard here or a standard in other countries to that extent either, you guys. I do think this was sort of an interesting take on that other countries, that around the world, countries have different beauty standards. And I think that might be true. I don't know how accurate the thing. I don't think the thing was supposed to be an exact, perfect, accurate experiment, right? I think it was just sort of to be fun and sort of interesting, right? But some of the designers kept the woman looking largely like herself. Others, of course, added shoes, made her look different hair. Some countries gave her an exaggerated hourglass figure, while others gave her an apparent BMI of 17.5 or near anorexic. In Italy and China did that. Like Italy's and China's was like crazy. Like hers looked like just a fraction of the body mass of the other one. China and Italy returned the thinnest Photoshop figures. China's had an index BMI of 17, while Spain returned the heaviest. Sort of interesting, right? So what is the smartphone and social media's impact on our view of beauty? Well, just think, you guys. I mean, it's interesting that when we put up images, and largely we put up images of ourselves, right? Like portraits of us, portraits of our friends. I know we take landscape shots too. We do photograph our food occasionally also, and we do events and things like that. But I mean, honestly, most of the stuff you're going to see, there's a person in it, or there's a human being in there, right? And that human being doesn't usually go up without being edited in some way. Well, think about that in a little bit of like reverse engineer why Instagram and Facebook and other platforms are so addictive, right? And so alluring, is that if we edit a photo of ourselves and we upload it, right, we add dopamine to that action by the comments, the likes, the positive feedback and reinforcement, and that makes us continue the same behavior. So however we edited it, whether it be really, I mean, imagine if like a woman in China edited her photo to look like the original one and edited it down to look like the real thin one that we saw. And then she posts it up and it gets thousands and thousands of likes and comments and affirmation and reinforcement. Everything that just happened were constant dopamine hits. So she's getting like lit up with great brain drugs, and every time she does something like that. So that's going to continue that process, whether it be a great edit, a bad edit, maybe an unhealthy edit in some sense. There's lots of reinforcement for her, or him, same, right? This, you guys, is a photographer. This is a little more scientific. A photographer named Rankin. He asked these gals, he gave them the image to the left and told them to edit themselves and change their features to match how they sort of see themselves, or how they want to see themselves, or how they would like to be edited, right? This is their ideal face and body features. And if you look, what are the differences we see from left to right? We see her nose got pinched and smaller. Her cheeks receded back. Her upper lip and bottom lip both got fuller. Her neck got thinner and her shoulders got pushed down. Forehead is about the same height. She removed all her freckles. She cleaned up her brows and gave herself some really amazing eyeshadow and helped accentuate her eyes and her lashes, right? Both bottom and top. And the bridge of her nose, you guys, is a real thin line of a bridge of nose. The bone that runs from between your eyes down to the tip of your nose, that piece of cartilage there, the bridge of her nose is real thin also now. So surprisingly enough, this gal, this is the exact same thing. She edited her away and edited her nose in a way that looks like the girl before her. Lips are full, shoulders are pushed down, face is more narrow, nose is pinched toward camera. I mean, same here, right? So what's crazy is all these young girls are photographing themselves or are editing themselves. And this is what they feel they should look like, or how they would best feel and best look when they would post. This is the most accurate version of themselves, right? Of how they see themselves and how they would edit themselves. This is their perception they want. And this one was really, this one to me looked really bad. Like, I mean, her skin's so light, her nose is so thin, her face is so pointing now toward like camera. It's crazy, right? And again, same thing with sort of the pinched nose and smaller bridge or thinner bridge of her nose. And her eyes are bigger. Just a lot going on here. But everyone did the same thing, right? Rankin, these are all teenagers, like 13 to 19, and this is how they edit themselves, right, as young teen girls. So one thing I want to call your attention to is that focal length of your lens in photography can change the person's face, right? And most of us have never considered that. And it's something we need to consider and think about, right? Because when I pull a lens out of my camera bag, I'm immediately choosing that I'm going to do something to the subject's face, okay? If I take a really long lens out, it sort of compresses and pushes the face into itself a little bit, and there's compression that happens, whereas the depth is compressed, right? Whereas if you shoot a wide, and those are, you guys, long lenses that do that and compress images are anything that's 50 millimeters and above. And you'll see in 50 millimeters for cameras in today's world, 50 millimeters is generally the sweet spot, and a spot that doesn't really compress or distort, okay? Anything above 50 millimeters is going to compress items in the shot, whether it be subject to background, right? But there's going to, what's called compression is going to happen, and it's going to actually, going to compress the photo, and it's going to sort of smash it together, right? It's going to sort of flatten it out a little bit. So that's what happens at long focal lengths. So if you're looking at 350 millimeters, then there's 230, there's 200. We're going left to right on the top. There's 135 millimeters, 100 millimeters, 70 millimeters, 50 millimeters. We finally get at 50 millimeters. That's what the woman looks like in real life. Like, as we were to walk up to her with our human being eyes and see her, that's what she looks like. Okay, that's an accurate, and a realistic depiction of this woman's anatomy. Anything above 50 is not. Conversely, anything below 50 millimeters is considered wide angle. And at wide angles, what happens is the closer you get to the lens, right, more distortion happens. There's more distortion happening the closer you get to that lens. If you stand in the exact same spot as this photographer here tried to do, you still see distortion at 35 millimeters down below, 24 millimeters. So what happens, right? What happens at 35 and 24 millimeters? Well, the woman's nose is starting to get a little thinner. It's starting to point toward camera. Her eyes are starting to fade back a little bit. Her shape of her face is getting a little more almond and less round as the camera as the distortion of whatever's closest to camera starts to appear a little larger, and everything else starts to fade back a little bit. She's getting this sort of almond shape to her face. So if you look down below and see the difference between down here at the very bottom right, between 19 millimeters lens, that's a wide angle, right, which is meant to get like landscapes and lots of stuff in the shot, and you see it compared to 350 millimeters. I shoot a 400 millimeter when I shoot sports. Between the 350 and the 19 millimeter, that looks like an entirely different woman. Entirely different woman photographed by the exact same camera with just different lenses. So the lens can cause either wide angle distortion, or it can cause compression from heavy focal length or long focal lengths. Now, how did that affect, or why does that affect us with smartphones and smartphone photography? Well, if you think about it, the early smartphones, I mean, they don't have all the cool cameras and back cameras and stuff that we can shoot now and turn the camera around and all that stuff, right? They didn't have back cameras and things like that. The early smartphones had a camera facing front, and I think the iPhone that came out had the iPhone 3, I think, or something, or 2 or 3 had a decent camera on it, right? But you'd have to turn it toward yourself and press the button. And there was no like easily photographing yourself. And I don't think even Apple at the time thought that people at arm's length would turn a wide angle lens at their face and photograph their face. So the danger of that is that all these smartphones, right, their native glass, their native lens, I'm talking when we're not out at two times or 3 times, or, getting longer and longer with your focal length. I'm talking about the native lens that we used to use. was wide angle. It was super wide angle. It was like more than 24. So they tried to use software and stuff to fix the distortion a little bit and things. But dude, the closer you put a wide angle lens, which is what all older smartphones were, and even ones to today, the 0.5 that we use today on a lot of our shots now, 0.5 is wide angle, dude. That's what wide angle is. And they represent it with the number 0.5, but dude, it's wide angle, and even the standard lens on most smartphones is wide angle. So holding a wide angle close to your face causes your nose to pinch, your cheeks to recede, your eyes will be bigger than your ears, your lips will look bigger. You'll look literally like the woman on the right over here. That's sort of what her face starts to look like as she got wide angle. That's also the same effect I see from this girl's editing. She looks like ideal editing for her is what looks to be a wide angle distortion from a wide angle lens. And it's probably all because she's been using smartphones for most of her life to determine how her face anatomy is supposed to look. Crazy. So for homework this week, you guys, watch the tutorial on the editing under the tutorial page. There's all the steps. There'll be steps listed in the homework assignment I want you guys to complete. But here's what it looks like. This is Jacob. He was a senior, high school senior grad of mine. He is not only a cowboy roper, and he can do awesome, amazing tricks with his lasso and his rope. He also is a world class, I think maybe nationals. He's a nationally known and sponsored dirt bike rider. Like, he's freaking really good. So I shot his senior grad photos. He's a cowboy at heart. So we brought this stuff out. We shot this. Here's the stuff I did and the stuff we're going to do this week. You can see actually right above the F, there's a little dot, a little dust dot, and that'll have to be fixed, right? But not to mention I edited his skin because you'll notice his skin looks a little rough. I cropped it because in the very top right, you'll see a piece of wood I don't like. Very top right corner, it looks like it's like a piece of yellow wood, like a post, and I didn't crop it out and it bothers me. We're going to move the power lines and the poles. We're going to warm this image up because it needs to look a little more sunny. We're going to add a little magenta to it also. We're going to remove the dust spots I mentioned. We're going to darken the bottom of the image, and we're going to darken the sky also. Okay, and we're going to add some grain too. But those are the things we're going to do. That's in your assignment area. So when you guys go to that, you'll see it. This is what it's sort of going to look like, right? We're going to also learn to put a copyright thing on the bottom. You'll notice I did not take the pole off the back of his left shoulder, and I should have. And this is what it looked like when I've done some editing. I also edited this in Photoshop on my desktop, and I dropped in a sky, which I thought looked really cool, and I enjoy swapping skies out. And I can't wait until we can do that on our smartphones also. But that's basically, you guys, the lecture for the week. We're going to be editing, and we're going to get in heavy into editing this week.